Welcome, everyone. We are excited to have you here today for the CMAA product demo. People are starting to trickle in. I just wanted to introduce our two presenters from Lydon Solutions. First, we have Jeff Lydon. He's the president of Lydon Solutions and has over 25 years of experience in construction. In 2009, he co-founded Lydon Solutions, a Microsoft software solutions provider for the construction industry. Their enterprise construction management solution is called Construction Viz, which is available for Microsoft 365. Also with us today is Paul Bedford. He is a Lydon Solutions enterprise architect and has worked with the Microsoft technology stack for over 20 years. He focuses on Microsoft Azure, Office 365, SharePoint, and the Power Platform. Before we hand it over to Jeff, I just wanted to let you know that if you do have any questions, please feel free to write in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can answer in real time. We will also have extended Q&A at the end of the presentation. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jeff, who's going to get this demo showcase started.
Okay, thank you for joining the product demo. I'm going to try and knock this out in hopefully 50 minutes. A lot of times I run over and I apologize. But if you do have questions along the way, put them in the chat and we'll try and knock those out as we're going. I've got Paul Bedford on here, as Michelle alluded to. He's our enterprise architect. Paul's going to help us out on going through kind of the technical details of Construction Viz. If you guys have any questions on how to deploy it or anything like that, definitely this is the time to kind of ping us on that chat. All right, so let's get into the details. So here's what we're going to cover in the agenda. We're going to cover who we are, a little bit about our history, what services we offer. I'm going to explain what Construction Viz is. It's a very unique setup. It's a progressive web app, which is going to be a little bit different than probably what some of the PMIS solutions that are out there that you're familiar with. We'll talk about the apps, some of the apps that are available. I'm only going to show a couple apps, maybe 3 of them: submittal enterprise, drawings, and just general navigation. There's a ton of apps, and if you're interested in more apps, you can go to our website on constructionviz.com, and we've got a features page, and then we've got a whole set of descriptors on all the apps that we have in the application. Paul's going to get into like how Construction Viz works, so you understand how we deploy it into a 365 tenant, and then how you access it, especially if you're like a contractor with guest access coming into a tenant. It's pretty unique how we can leverage that. Then we're going to do the demo, and I'm going to try and blow through that. Hopefully I don't go too far with that, and then come back to something called adaptive cards. And this is where this is a really unique feature of our product, but we can also just leverage this with any kind of 365 development. But adaptive cards are little applications you can put into email, and you can respond. You can put input in, and you can get data out all in email and work in email, which is something that is really unique to kind of our solution in 365. And then why Lydon Solutions, kind of a closer, and then questions at the end. Right? Okay, so who we are. So we were founded in 2009. We're actually a woman-owned business. My wife actually came out of Silicon Valley. She worked for an HR startup company. I came out of construction. I've got over 20 years experience in construction, and I started in estimating, and I went to project controls, project management, director of project assurance, all different areas in construction. So civil, environmental, manufacturing, healthcare, transmission, distribution, and along the way deployed a lot of different systems over the years. Things like, and you're probably familiar with these ones, like Contract Manager. I was involved with SAP as a construction management solution, Expedition back in the day. I was a product manager for Unifier back when it was Skyr Unifier, before Oracle picked them up. So over the years, deployed a lot of different systems and learned how they get developed, how they get deployed, and what I kind of gathered from all of it, and I wanted to kind of come up with something that was going to be a little bit different than what was out there is, I found them to be very expensive, these systems that were out there. and the time I was deploying these things, it was like $1 million to deploy one of these systems, and required a huge team. It was like some of the teams I had were like 30 people on a team. It was very rigid. You couldn't really customize it much. They were just starting to come out with some of the configuration pieces to it. And a lot of times it was like using, as I always kind of say, is like a nuclear warhead when all you need is a hammer. So what we did is we looked around out in the industry at the time and what everyone had. We didn't want to build something from the ground up, and then it's very tough to get people to bite on something from the ground up. So we leveraged SharePoint as the platform, and we started doing custom development in SharePoint. You know, back in the day, it was InfoPath forums. They're kind of fading out now, but Designer and SharePoint sites and all this kind of stuff, all within SharePoint. And we would host and we would deploy these to major jobs. And our first job was like $3 billion. We kept getting more and more work. And then I want to say like 5 years ago, we started seeing Microsoft 365 take off. And that's when you started seeing Teams kick in, you know, the Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and people started really embracing it. And it started really becoming a really powerful product, and more companies are moving toward it. So what we wanted to get into is, before we were just doing the kind of custom development on SharePoint and stuff like that, what we wanted to get into was a product. And that's why we kind of spent the past, I want to say 5 years working on Construction Viz, where it's something that, while we can still do custom development, we can deploy this solution into a different location. So we can host it, we can deploy it into a client's 365, we can deploy it into a client's SharePoint. So that's kind of the impetus of why we went down the Construction Viz side of it, is we wanted something simple, that's easy to deploy, that's powerful, and takes advantage of the Microsoft 365 suite. Again, we're still doing a lot of just straight up 365 development and SharePoint development. In fact, we're working on a couple $1 billion program right now that involves Microsoft Project, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, SharePoint, all those tied together. So they're all in the same wheelhouse, but Construction Viz is our product, right? Let's go in the next. Oh, and by the way, we're WE certified, and we're in sam.gov. So, and we have on our website, we do have a capability document if you're interested in that. Okay, so what is Construction Viz? So Construction Viz is an enterprise construction management solution. We've used Construction Viz on $1 million, billion-dollar projects. So we've got that kind of mix in there. It is based on the leading edge technology is called a progressive web app. If you're not familiar with a progressive web app, the idea behind it is that it runs basically in the browser. So as opposed to a lot of applications that are out there where you have to, like if you're using an Android device, you're going to have to go to, you know, Google Play and download an app onto the device to use some kind of solution that's out there, and it's specific to that device. With the progressive web app, it'll work on any device as long as you're on a modern browser. Meaning if you're using Chrome, you know, Safari, Edge, it's going to work. It doesn't matter if it's a phone, an iPhone, a Google Android phone. It doesn't matter what it is, and it's going to work. And that's one of the best parts about it. The other piece too is that the entire solution can go offline without an internet connection. So the experience can be the same across devices and browsers with an offline capable solution, which is pretty unique. As I mentioned before, a key part of this is this ability to deploy into different locations. So there are scenarios where a client does, you know, maybe they need to run everything through IT, and it takes a while to get approval on anything, even though this is all the data is being stored in your tenant. They might want to have us host it for a while. So we have scenarios, and we're still doing hosting. We're still hosting Construction Viz deployments on our end. And then when they're ready, we can port it over into their 365 tenant for all the data to be in their tenant. So it's a very unique situation, the fact that we can determine where we want to deploy it, and the infrastructure, there's not a lot of infrastructure required to do this. I mean, if you've got 365 and you've got SharePoint, which is part of your E3 or whatever, you know, licensing platform you have SharePoint, so we can deploy into a SharePoint site. Also, if you've got SharePoint on premise, like 2013 or above, we can deploy there as well. So it's pretty flexible in terms of where we can put it. And then what's powerful about it is that your data is in your tenant. So when we deploy, when I say deploy, it's basically, it's an Azure web app and it's running in the cloud, but your data is being stored in SharePoint lists and libraries. I'm going to show you that in the demo. And that's really unique about this situation, is that you're, if at any point in time, if you're like, you want to cut the cord, all your data is with you. And that data is available 24/7. You're not having to go to some third party to get your data. So you basically could archive in place if you wanted to do that, and all your data is available for your own reporting. We're also using the Azure identity platform. So what does that mean? It's going to allow you to log in with your normal 365 credentials. There's no separate login, separate username and password. All it's the exact same thing. And it's secure on the application side and on the data side, which is great. How we set this up was that it's configurable and customizable. So coming out of the SharePoint development environment that we started in, we know that every single client wants something different. I know everyone says construction's consistent, but it's consistently inconsistent, right? So there's configuration in there, capabilities, right? You're not building forms from scratch in our tool, but you can configure the forms that we have. But it's customizable, meaning if you're like, I want to have some form that's tied to a Gantt chart and it's got some map where I'm going to show all the projects are, we can put that together because we've got a whole bunch of applications that we can hook up and create solutions for you. And that's kind of how we built the whole product. The other thing about Construction Viz that I'm putting it in these slides and I keep pushing for it, that it's been a lot of work. We've been working on this for a few years now, is we're creating a marketplace. So what you'll be able to do here is buy your apps. We've got ChargeBee set up, and we've got a whole middleman server and all this kind of set up. All this technology is built out. We're just doing the connections now, but you'll be able to buy apps online with a credit card. It doesn't matter the size of your company. You could be mom and pop with 1 or 2 people, and you could download those apps into your tenant, in your 365 tenant, and use those applications. What I mean by apps, something like an RFI or a submittal, if that's all you need, or a daily report, you would be able to pull those down, pay with a credit card, and be off and running. The other piece to it is, you never know. I mean, SharePoint's been around since I think 2001, and I don't see it going away anytime soon, but we're also preparing ourselves, if anything were to happen, that we can actually host in SQL, or we can deploy into SQL. We can deploy it into different databases, so it doesn't have to be just SharePoint. So that's kind of the roadmap that we're working on right now. Okay, so some of the Construction Viz apps, just to give you kind of a flavor of what's out there. So we've got a bunch of different apps, and we come up with new stuff all the time. In fact, we create probably a form a month, and then we create new components probably every couple of weeks. And what I mean by component, it's these like little widgets that make up our application. So the ones we're going to go through are going to be like the forms. So we've got a ton of forms. I say 30 on here. There's more than that, but the way we've kind of set this stuff up is everything is kind of driven. If you want to look, if you're interested in kind of how the pricing works, it's per user per month based on the number of apps. So there's no additional cost for, like, if your project gets to a certain size or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward, and we're flexible with it. Like, we'll, if you've got a bunch of users that are just viewing data, we'll work with you on adjusting, pricing accordingly. But the whole thing is around what apps do you want and how many users you have, and that's how we adjust it. Now, if it's completely configurable, configure or customized solution, that might increase the SLA a little bit, but we're in a very competitive range with the SLA. Again, over 30 construction forms, all kind of different forms, submittals, RFIs, dailies, you name it. We kind of have those built out, and it's component-driven design. So when I say components, these widgets. So think of like a widget as being something like an attachment. So creating a form that has an attachment area where you can drop off attachments, or a widget that's a map, or a widget that is like approvals that you just want to add onto a form. So we can kind of Frankenstein forms together based on what the need is, based on using these components. The other thing that's unique about our applications is we look at it 360. So when we say like an app, if you've messed around with SharePoint over the years, and you can buy these third-party tools that are out there where it's like a form tech or it's a, I don't know, reporting solution or dashboard solution. It's like one thing, but it does one thing and maybe it does that really well. What we do is when we build an app, we're thinking about it 360. So when I say that, I mean, we're thinking about the metadata that goes with it, like how you're going to report on it, how you're going to search on it. We're thinking about permissions because there's 365 permissions, there's SharePoint permissions because we're deploying in the SharePoint, and then we have our own access management, which is trying to simplify permissions management. But we're thinking about all that because you're having contractors come into your tenant. So all that has to be considered. We have our own dashboards set up in here, but you can tie in Power BI reports into here. And general reporting, we have a reporting solution we're working on now where you're gonna be able to create your own reports in addition to Power BI reports and hooking them in the Construction Viz. Notifications, so thinking about how you come in and you get alerted on things, or that's part of every one of these applications. Like, hey, you got something to take action on. That's the key thing. Come in, get out, and take care of your items in your queue. Workflow, we got a simplistic workflow in here that's real easy from day one. You can just start clicking through and picking who you want to send things to, but you can tie in Power Automate, and I'll show you that in the demo with a sample of Power Automate workflow. Attachments, it's not just attaching a file to like a form. So for example, if you've ever used like InfoPath, you attach a file to a form and it's stuck in that form. It's not really sitting somewhere in a document library. You can access it with the metadata. If you put an attachment on a form, it grabs all the metadata from the form and goes with the attachment. So if you did want to run a bunch of reports and search on it in SharePoint, it's available that way. And then just in general, because we're saving in the SharePoint, it's considering lists and libraries. And if you need to have like a folder set up and all that, we're considering that when we design the applications. Hopefully this makes sense on kind of the mindset of how we create these apps. All right, so this is Paul, you still there?
I am.
All right. You just let me, I'm going to click through. You go ahead.
Okay. So when Jeff was just talking, he mentioned deploying into your into your Microsoft 365 tenant. We do not actually deploy any code, any script, anything like that into your tenant at all. Everything is hosted in our Azure environment from the code side. What happens when you first sign up? Do you want to click, Jeff?
Yep.
And it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you're coming from an Outlook session, Excel, browsers, mobile, you're going to come in through the Microsoft Identity Platform. Microsoft's Identity Platform allows us to securely connect Construction Viz running out of our Azure tenant with your Microsoft 365 tenant. And then Construction Viz can also connect into our SQL Server reporting warehouse. If you want us to use that, you don't have to use that, but we can provide that. And then on the other side, it will connect into your Microsoft 365. So that's SharePoint, the Power Platform, and Project as well. And what happens is we hydrate your SharePoint site that you've nominated to start with your first project. We hydrate the lists and libraries in that site, and we create them at the installation time.
Can we go next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, each of the users coming in can be, an owner, a construction manager, users in your tenant that have licenses for Microsoft 365 in your tenant. But we also allow guest users. So you may or may not know that Microsoft 365 allows you to provide a guest license to people that are not in your tenant. And that license is free to you and them. But those users can also access Construction Viz. Everybody comes in through the Microsoft Identity Platform. On initial deployment, a tenant admin on your side will be asked to consent to allow Construction Viz to access SharePoint lists and libraries. Once that consent has been provided, then the Construction Viz application can go to work and create and store data in your environment. The kind of front porch, if you like, to Construction Viz is the Construction Viz portal. It provides a centralized location where we can roll up information and data from your projects and provide you a dashboard there, should you want to, and it gives you a portfolio of sites. And if you have many sites or a number of different project sites and different users access different sets of those sites, each user will only see the projects that you've allowed them to access. And so it creates a filtered view for them without them needing to do anything. From the portal then, a user would choose a project and click visit or enter, and they would get to the Construction Viz hub. Construction Viz can support a couple of different models. You can have one site is one project approach, and so you would have multiple sites for multiple projects, or you can choose to have Construction Viz manage a portfolio or a program in one site where there will be many projects within one SharePoint site, and you can mix those two together. So if you've got larger projects that have multiple phases, for example, you might want to put them all into a single project site, program site. And if you've got smaller projects or projects that you do want to keep separate, you can do that as well, and you can mix and match. So it's talked about SharePoint. SharePoint is basically our database. The lists and libraries are the tables from in a database conceptually, and all of the information stays in your tenant. We don't take it out. We don't move it anywhere. It's behind your security, and it's there for you to. You can archive in place, like Jeff mentioned. You can move it out easily. It's a lot different to other hosted solutions where the information is stored outside your perimeter in other vendor systems.
Okay, you ready for this? This is the one and only time I'm going to do this. I'm going to use the bounce in the presentation. You see that? That's the only time I've ever done that. So let's get into the demo. Okay, so this is the portal. You guys, Paul, it's okay, right? You guys can see it?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, cool. This is the portal. So this is where you would come in to see all of your projects. So it's all permission controlled. You're seeing everything because I have access to everything, but it would be based on your company. So in theory, you'd only see, like, if this is your company, that's it. That's all you would see. And again, it could represent this is one SharePoint site, but this could represent a program of hundreds, even thousands of projects in one SharePoint site, or it could be one SharePoint site per project. So that's the whole idea here, is this is where everyone comes into, this is where you come into, and then you kind of get this kind of your manifold that filters you out into the different projects. And we can do like portfolio roll-ups from here. So you can roll up data outside, from those sites, we can roll it up into this portfolio level, schedule data, map, that kind of stuff. So if you think about it, it just depends on what makes the best sense for you on how you set up your structure, but we can accommodate, again, project, program, and portfolio level aggregation and roll up of data. So let me pop into this. This is an actual deployment. This deployment has in it more than one project. Again, it could be one or however you want to set it up, but and it could be different for every one of your projects. So this look and feel that I have here, it doesn't have to look like that for the next project that you deploy into your tenant, or you might want to have us host it and it could look different. What I mean by that is in our settings, you can change out the look and feel of these profiles. So if you want it to be like blue, a different company name and project name, logos different, all that kind of stuff, you can do that and just switch them over. These are different profiles within the exact same site. But what we're showing you right here is like an owner profile. Basically, the idea here is we're using the green color, our logo's up in here, and this whole thing is responsive, by the way. So you can see that if you're on a phone, it's going to hamburger the menu up, right? just depending on the device. So same experience on any device, it's just a responsive UI. How we've got this set up is we try to make it as simple as possible to make it like less intimidating to come into the program. Now we can always tweak this to put more graphs and charts and all that kind of stuff on it, but we try and keep it pretty clean coming in. We try and make it look similar to like a Microsoft product. So you've got like your nav over here, you've got a notification center up here. So how you kind of get in and I'm looking at this from an owner perspective. I'm going to jump into a contractor perspective when we do a submittal. So it's going to be a little bit different on the profile. But if I came up here and I wanted to look at like all of the things that are due in my queue, I could come up here and say, okay, there's 2 daily reports. If I click it, it's going to take me to those 2 daily reports. And if I scroll over, it's got my name. So this is the ball and court side of it. It's got my name on those 2 daily reports, right? Same thing with these dashboards. So it says 2 daily reports here, just like it said up in the notification. If I click it, you could filter the dashboards by different vendors, different contractors, and it shows you the status of all the daily reports. And then you could click into the ones that are mine. There's 2 different status, there's new and open. But it shows me those 2 forms that were in my queue, right? So again, notifications, dashboards, and then over on the left-hand side, you can pop into your forms. Like if I want to go to daily reports, here's all of my forms here of daily reports. A couple other things I want to point out. This portal is going to take me right back to the portal. And I'm going to pop in here for a second because I'm going to create a SharePoint. I'm going to pop into the actual SharePoint side as a separate tab. And I'm going to show you this in a second. Let me pop back in here. As you can see, it's using my login to come into 365. It's no different, login to come in. Okay, some of the settings, and there's a bunch of other settings I'm not showing in here, but just to give you kind of an idea here, you could come in here and update. You have access to change like drop-down fields. So we're going to go through submittals, but just to give you an idea, you could come in and like pick submittals, and let's say you want to change your packages out. You just come in here and you can add any packages you want, and you can set them for default. So when you fill out a submittal form, what's going to be available in the drop-down picker. So, and there's all different fields in all the forms. This is some of the configuration capabilities that you can do on your own. Also things like, if you want to track work breakdown structure in here, you can manage those, spec numbers, and also if you want to upload assets in here, we can link assets to any one of our applications, right? A couple other things in here is, you can create Power BI dashboards and you can add them to our dashboards. So you see this one here, it's funny, it asked me to log in. This is one that you can add. When it has that different icon in here, that's yours. I'll probably have to log in, but you'll see what I'm talking about. So this is a Power BI dashboard that you can just add into our dashboard set. And you can link this to, you can have anything in here. Like you could have training in here if you wanted, to training site, to like a stream training site if you wanted to. You can add whatever you want from the settings. It's just in this dashboard area. You just copy and paste the URL in here. Also Power Automate. So we have, like I said before, you have kind of like a basic workflow in here. You just ad hoc, you pick who you want to route it to. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But you can also add in here your own workflows. So let's say you want to you create a Power Automate workflow. You build it out, grab the URL, paste it in here. You pick RFI, you color your buttons, whether it's active or not, in the order of the buttons. And then because it's tied to RFI, if I went to RFIs, this is that whole component thing I was talking about before. If I scroll into a form and I go to the bottom, this is a component. There's that workflow. So you could add workflows. If you're familiar with Power Automate, I'm not sure how many people online are building anything in Power Automate or Power Apps or Power BI, but all that stuff kind of connects into our solution. And that's one of the values of kind of what we're doing. And again, behind the scenes, it's SharePoint. So let me just show you something real quick here. I'm going to go into submittals because we're going to go through this in detail. There's 2 submittals I want to show you. We've got 2 different types of submittals. We've got submittal form, a basic one, and an enterprise. The difference here, you wouldn't have both of them in the same job necessarily, same project. The basic submittal form, you pick a submittal package and you fill out the submittal form, pretty straightforward. The enterprise one is where you pick from a submittal register, meaning not everybody has this in advance. If you have your register already identified, and I'm going to get into it here, I'm going to show it in a second, but if you already got your register already kind of baked out, that's per the contract, you can load that up in advance, and then the contractor can only pick from those, and it pulls all that data into the form automatically. So it brings in all kind of information, discipline, and the dates of the submittal, et cetera. All that stuff gets pulled in. And then also we've added in the ability to status every single like page of attachments in an enterprise form. And I'll get to that in a second. So we're going to focus first on the submittal form. But what I want to kind of touch on here is so you understand how this thing is working with SharePoint. There is SharePoint right behind the scenes on this. This is the SharePoint site, right here. Everybody's familiar with this. We're not theming it. We don't need to theme it because we don't hit it in terms of we don't have these pages active inside Construction Viz right now. You can add the page into Construction Viz and navigate to it, but we're really, as Paul mentioned, we're using it as a database. So if you go in the site contents and you go into like, these are libraries, by the way, they're document libraries. When we install the apps, they create the document libraries in here. Again, there's no code, it's just deploying the actual doc library and the SharePoint lists. These are the SharePoint lists. So if I go to like submittals, there's a lot in here. Submittal form. Okay, there's actually 9 in here, but I don't have access to all of them in Construction Viz. I'm only seeing 3 here, which is 6.2 and 1.01. So all these records are sitting inside your SharePoint, right? So 1.01 is this one. So this is the original one. This is the revision. I've got 6 I can see. What was the other one? 2. So 2 is right here. So that data, you can use it any way you want. You can pull it up in Microsoft Lists. You can use it for Power BI reports, anything you want to do there. So as you create the forms in here, it's updating those lists inside SharePoint. So let's walk through basically how these apps work. We tried to make this pretty, seamless and intuitive as possible. You've got these 3 different views on submittals where if you want to see like all the open items, you just click open. It shows me all the open ones, all the ones that are new, or any new ones, all items. This view over here, again, these 2 are just for, these things show the views of the forms. So if I come over to all items, I want to look at the ones I initiated. Very quickly, I can see that, or the ones pending my response. Over here in this tab is what we did is, as you guys know, in like submittals and RFIs, is you're not always looking for the form, you're looking for the attachments. So the form's like a cover sheet. So when you attach to one of our forms, we also display the attachments in a separate view. You can get back to the forms from here, but you can pop the views, or you can display all the attachments separate, and then you can actually pop them open from here. And these don't have to open. We can have these things open in your browser in the native, if you're using 365, they can open up in a web browser version. But there's 2 attachments for form 6, 1 for 2, and this is 1.01. There's a revision in here, but these are the attachments, and these things you can drag and drop just like the forms. You can filter on them. There's columns you can add. You can all kind of filters, search. So a lot of capabilities to find the records you're looking for. So I'm going back to the forms. So that's just another view of what's attached. I got 3 forms visible right here. If you want to create a new form, you just hit new, boom, pops another form. Pretty straightforward. If I want to create a view in here, this grid, I can create the view. Let's say I want to like bring location up, I can drag it up, and then I just hit Excel export, and it's going to pop open the Excel file. Now it's not like SharePoint where it does the ODBC connection where it's linked up, but you can kind of tweak your Excel file outside of here, right? We put process flows in here, so every time we deploy an application, we have our own process flow that we propose. You don't have to use it, you can always change it, but it's going to come out in Visio. Again, it doesn't have to come into a desktop version. you know, you could open in the browser if you want, but this is part of the exercise we like to go through. So we're not just trying to push like a system on everyone. We're trying to understand your processes, and then we tailor the system around that. That's like the big focus. And if it means there's 365 stuff like a Power Automate workflow, we can do that. So we're leveraging all those pieces, but the process flows kind of give you an idea of not only what's in the system, but kind of the whole process in general. We're trying to map that out. So everyone understands it and they can get to it from the same application. Like you're not having to bounce around to get training and all that kind of stuff. It's all sitting there available. The steps in the process are just Excel explaining these process flow. Your training guides here, and we can actually tie in video training if that's what you want. We've got some video training that we can post up into your stream, and then you can share that. You can print these forms off. So get print selected. And you can export these into different formats, and you can search on them, etc. So there's some nice capability with these reports. And like I mentioned, we have a reporting tool that we're looking to roll out here soon, that you'll be able to build your own reports from scratch. Not only just Power BI reports and not only SQL reports, but build out your own reports right within the solution. Other reports we got available, like a summary log, so you can see, it's basically like that Excel or that log that I just showed you. All of your submittals are in here, links into the actual forms you can pop open. And then also like outstanding, whose ball and court is it? And right. So that's kind of the to pop into some of the reports that are right there. I'm going to pop into a form and show you some of the features of how we've got this built out. So when we do a submittal form, there's a couple of things, and we've got this ability to do revisions right out of the gate. So like if you're a submittal or RFI, a whole bunch of different forms use like revision. So if you have like a contractor submit something and then you put a status on it, revise and resubmit, you want them to fix it and resubmit it back, you can create a revision, and basically it duplicates the entire form, and it keeps that whole history. For example, I've got one right here, and it labels it .01. So this is a submittal that was already done. This is the original. Did a revise and resubmit. Came back, contractor hits create revision. It pops another one in here, and it increments the value in it. But that's one of the neat things, is having revision. We also have copy function as well. So, but you come in, put a title in, pick a project. It's a single pick on project. Certain forms we have multi-selects in there depending on the form. Like a daily is a little bit different. Phase, location, phase category. You pick a contractor of who's submitting the submittal. It populates your name in there. It saves the date. We've got several statuses in our forms. We've got a form status. We've got a responder status. We've got document statuses, and then we actually have the ability down into the actual document, the sheets of like a drawing or a page within an attachment. So we've got multiple levels depending on how detailed you want to get. You could set up priorities in here. So priority being when you need to have something reviewed and approved. So if you like have a high priority, and you could see it gives you a little tool tip to tell you what it's all about. But you could set it to calendar days or work days, and it's going to calculate the target date. This is a submittal form. This is not the enterprise one. This is the basic one. So you're only picking a package from here that you load up in there. So you just pick a package, and then these other pieces in here, totally voluntary. You don't have to add, you don't have to do these, but you can tag something to a work breakdown structure. You can relate it to a spec. You can relate it to assets. So in theory, you could do a submittal and say you're doing a submittal for a bunch of transmission towers. You could go back and look up that 001 transmission tower and pull up all the submittals or all the R5s or everything related to that tower. That's what this code section's for. Again, these are components. They can be turned on and off. You don't need to fill them all out. Remark section, so you could capture any kind of comments back and forth with a contractor, and these are read-only. In the background, since it's saving in SharePoint, you can always tweak it, but in here it's read-only. You can relate it to drawings. So you could come in here and actually load up all your drawings in our drawing app. I don't have a ton of time to go through that because I want to get through adaptive cards, but you can, it'll pull in all the drawings and then you can relate them. Just click these boxes and hit apply. So you don't have to attach the drawings every time, and they're centralized. So there's only one source of truth on the job. Document attachments, you can drag and drop as many attachments as you want. We put 2 gig cap on it, but it really could go up to whatever size you want. You're just going to sit there longer. I don't know if 365 is unlimited now on size. I thought it was like 20 gig, but maybe it's higher. But you're just going to wait on it.
Essentially, yeah, but it's not sensible to go too big.
Yeah, if you're waiting for like a whole day doing that. But here's a neat, unique thing about how we set this up. When you drag and drop the files in here, they're going to show up in this view over here in documents, right, with all the metadata tied to it, and also in SharePoint. So it grabs the data. If you've ever messed around trying to build anything out in SharePoint, it's like documents are separate than the list, and you have to try and get the metadata in there. When you drag and drop a document attached, any kind of attachments in here, the metadata goes with it, and you can name these in here too. You can change the titles, and it does a whole check. Like if the file's already in there, it's going to give you a warning. Does all that in advance for you guys. You can add links in here, links within Construction Viz or outside of Construction Viz. Reviews, so you can come in here and pick. This is kind of like an ad hoc workflow. So you could pick who do you want to route something to, what's the due date, and then hit a response date and hit activate. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase my, if you look up here, it increased my notifications, it's going to increase the dashboard. And then we can automate this, or you can have this be manual, where you can come in here and pick who do you want to send it to. And then you could just say, put in a comment. And what it does, if I hit send email, it's going to send the email off. It's going to take a second here for it to come in, but the email basically has all the information from the form, and it has a link to the form. Now, adaptive cards we're going to get to here in a bit. It's a little bit of a different type of email with an application actually in the email, which is pretty neat. When that comes in, I'll pull it up and show you guys. But the only other thing I want to point out with our submittals here is this ability to, at any point in time, you can run these PDF reports. So if you want to do a report that includes the attachments, I've got 2 attachments in here. All you have to do is hit next. You can reorganize them the way you want. Let's put 220 up there. Hit next. It's going to name it, and then you hit save, and then it's going to create a binder PDF with everything in it. It converts actual like Excel files, Word files into PDF format, and it puts it into a binder. So if you needed to bind it and then archive it somewhere else, you could do that. Right? It actually takes all those attachments and converts them. All right, cool. Here's the actual email that came out. Oops. There's the email here. Right here. So it's pretty basic, nothing too exciting of an email that comes out basic, but the adaptive card one you're going to see is pretty powerful. So that's submittals, basic submittals. Now I got to crank on this submittal enterprise so we can get through it. If I go to submittal enterprise, here's going to be the difference. Okay, you notice there's another tab over here called submittal register. Well, if you know all of your submittals that have to come in advance, you can preload them. So you can come in here and load up, okay, who's responsible for that submittal? What project's it related to? If you got multiple projects in the same site, what's the title, the spec number, the package, the phase, any kind of descriptions, all this kind of information, you can preload them up in here. And then when I go into an actual submittal, when I fill out a submittal, it's a little bit different from the fact that this stuff looks pretty familiar, right? Pretty straightforward. You can identify a ball in court if you want to look at it that way as opposed to a person. But when I come into the details, what you can do here is based on the project and the phase, it's going to filter out the register from what you can pick from. Like, See, it picks bi-weekly schedule update. That's the only one I can pick based on the criteria I picked above. So you can basically limit what the contractor is going to fill in so you don't get any kind of bad data, and it pulls all that data in from the register, right? So all that data is already getting pulled in. The other thing it's got in here, real quick, let me touch on this, is that you've got this review matrix. So I've got two attachments. I think I got one attachment here. I got like a construction management plan I attached. But what you can do in here within this, the submittal enterprise, is you could pick like the attachment and say, I want to put a comment on page 1, or a question to the contractor. This is the owner going back to the contractor, and maybe it's a contract issue. And maybe it's like, you know, where is the safety data? Ooh. And hit add. Now these comments are internal to start, so the contractor can't see these. But once they're good, once you're good, everyone agrees that these contract comments are good, you can select that comment and hit finalize. And what that does, hit apply, it pops it down into here. And this is what the only thing the contractor can see. And so now the contractor can come in and respond to that comment, hit edit, put their comment in. This was not in the contract, right? And hit update. And you can see it pops it in as the contractor response. And now it's back to me as the owner, and I can just say closed. You know, you're right. And that's it. I can hit status update and update it. So it just depends on how you want to kind of the level of detail that you want to control these reviews in. You could go all the way down to the file level, actual sheet within a file. That's the submittal enterprise form. I've got 12 minutes left. I want to get into adaptive cards. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I want to show you guys, but I always get behind on this stuff. Let me show you the adaptive cards. Okay. Pop this guy up. Okay, Paul, do you want to go through this?
Sure. Okay, so adaptive cards are a technology that Microsoft have developed, which allows you to send small applications, if you like, within email. They also can be used within Teams, so you can also send adaptive cards into Teams. A subset, if you like, of adaptive cards are something called actionable messages. And actionable messages can be sent through Outlook. They're basically, the two things are the same. So I'm just going to use adaptive cards from here on in. But essentially, you build an adaptive card description. It's a payload. Try not to get too technical, but it's a JSON description of what the adaptive card contains, the fields and the information it contains. Once that has been created, you just send an email just normally, and usually that's through Microsoft Power Automate. So we build a Power Automate workflow there's an action to send an email, and we put into the body of that email the JSON payload to send the adaptive card. Once the email gets sent and is received by a user, the adaptive card itself gets displayed and rendered in the email directly in Outlook. So you can send these internally to people within your own tenant, your own users. But the interesting thing here is you can send them outside. So you can send them to people that don't have even a guest account within your tenant. And so if you have construction subcontractors, or if your firm does not want you to allow external users into your Microsoft 365, you can still have Construction Viz interact with those external folks through Outlook and adaptive cards, which is quite interesting. This is an example of what an adaptive card would look like in an email. So you'll see there's some content here, and then the fields that you see towards the bottom of that form, if you like, have been pulled out of a Construction Viz form. So the information's been pulled out of Construction Viz, put into the adaptive card and sent to the recipient. And the two buttons below, the view submittal is a link that takes them back into Construction Viz and lets them see the form, should they have permissions and access to do so. And you obviously, this form, cannot include that link if it's not relevant. But then the respond button, when the user clicks on the respond button, what happens, the adaptive card changes and displays, in this instance, it displays a field for response. So there's a drop-down list that gets displayed that the user can select the response. So it might be revise and resubmit, it might be no action needed or approve. And then there's a field where the recipient can enter some extra information that they want to send back to Construction Viz and the program manager. And then they hit respond and the information goes back in. So it's a good way to kind of have a touchless way to interact with your external resources. There are a couple of limitations, as with all things. The adaptive cards and actionable messages only work in Outlook. So if you've got folks that are using Gmail or some other email service, that's not going to work for them. And the other thing is, when you respond to an adaptive card, at the moment, Microsoft don't provide a way for you to add an attachment to that adaptive card response. So if you want to receive files back in, you've got to be a little bit more creative, and that's something we do. We have some solutions for that. So, but all in all, it's a very interesting technology, and it helps address quite a lot of situations.
Cool. And I'm actually going to show you guys this. I got a little bit of time left here. Let me show you this in action. So let me go into a submittal form. I know there's questions out there, but I'm trying to blow through this, and then we'll hit it in the last 5 minutes. I apologize. So let me go down into a form. I'll take myself out of here. Okay, so let's say that either a workflow or somebody picks my name and says, here's the due date is today, and you hit activate. Now this response, by the way, and response date and response comments, only I can update that when I come in. No one else can do that, right? So it might take a second here for this to pop in, but you're going to see it's a little different than these guys. So that you see this guy, it's basically a view of data, right? It's pulling data in, and then you have to click a link to open and access into Construction Viz to update the form. With adaptive cards, you don't have to go in here at all. You don't have to go in the 365 at all. You're just doing everything from email. Just give it a second here to refresh. Let's see, while we're waiting. Looking at the PM software managed full project, start to finish, to help manage who does this and when, due diligence, design, planning, bid, DC construction. Yeah, it is a complete construction management solution. The only thing that we want to work with you on is if you're doing cost tracking, because we do have some cost tracking pieces in here, but we cater that toward how you actually track costs, because everybody's different on costs. Where do you build teams and assign access? We have a whole access management piece in here. I'll show you that in a second here, but this is the email that comes in. So you see it's a little bit different than what we saw with the regular email. This is an adaptive card. If I respond, and this, you can tailor this, depending on what you want to have in here. It could update any field in the form, but let's say that you want to have somebody say reviewed with comments and put in here, please change, I don't know, name of responder. I don't know, anything, just some kind of comment in here to send data back. The point here is that you're displaying data, but you're also absorbing data into the solution. If I hit save response, it's going to send it from an email back into our tool. Okay, cool. It says it's been responded to, right? So now, if I refresh this, and I'm going to go down that exact same section. It doesn't have to be the initiator. It could be anywhere, right? Anywhere in these forms. You can actually, what we're planning on doing is with another client is updating Microsoft project schedules with adaptive cards. You don't have to go into Microsoft project because some people don't want to go into Microsoft project. Okay, initial review. There it is. Please change name of responder. And I updated the response date and the status date automatically. You can see the power in that, right? Pretty neat stuff. Now, I got 4 minutes left. Comment here. If you have any questions, please post in chat. Thanks. Good. Oh, access management, real quick. Access management's right here. So you do all kinds of access management groups. We got it by contractor, and then you can actually check out your access management here. You can sign to different profiles as well, but you can see read-write access to different applications within the tool. So we leverage both SharePoint, 365, and then we have our own access management piece. I just want to finish real quick and then open up the questions on this last piece. Why Lydon Solutions? Just to give you guys kind of a heads up. We have been delivering these solutions since 2009. Some of the largest utility companies in the country we've been working with. We have a good construction experience, which is pretty unique for an IT company. It's all Microsoft stack. So if you need a solution in Microsoft, that's kind of our angle. And we're always trying to do cutting edge solutions. That's basically what our whole angle here. So I'm going to keep it open now to any other questions. Basically, I cannot use this if I have a Gmail account. Adaptive cards, you can't. Adaptive cards is just a nice feature that some clients, if they don't want to have contractors in their tenant at all, then that's when adaptive cards is handy, right? But they can log in the 365 as a guest. It's just the adaptive card thing uses Outlook. That's the only thing about it. But you can use the program with no issues, right? Can I use P6 and MS Project? Yeah, we actually have a P6 app on our website. I didn't show you guys that, but we can pull data in from P6. What we've done, we can hook up to a P6, or you can do a XER XML dump, and we can pull it in that way. So yeah, we can come at it from different angles. There's some setup there, but yeah, we can come at it from different angles. Any other questions? Can they upload documents through adaptive cards? Right now, they don't have that through adaptive cards, but you can email them in, and we have a way to strip out the attachments and put them into libraries. So yeah, we're working around that. That's the one thing that Paul brought up. So we have a way to address that, though. Any other questions? I wish I had more time. I know I just kind of blew through that pretty quick. So.
Well, Jeff, the good news is we will be sending out your contact information and a copy of this video tomorrow morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. I know I always I go right up to the wire, don't I? Terrible.
Oh, you actually have two. You have two more questions that came in if you want to take care of those.
Okay, how can we see pricing card or brochure? Just I guess Michelle is going to be sending out the information. You can contact us from there. You can send it to me if you want. No big deal. Has a system been used in claim situations? I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I can answer that. It says, how can we show levels of price? Yeah, so just reach out to us and then we'll give you a quote on depending on the number of users, what apps you want, and we'll go from there. Typical pricing, just to give you a rough idea, it could be $20 per user per month up to like $40 per user per month, maybe a little bit higher. Excuse me, if it's completely custom. And then there's just the setup cost. So, because we're deploying it into your tenant, so we got to make sure there's no, IT hasn't put anything in there. We haven't run into any issues yet, but if there is anything, we just got to prepare ourselves. That's all.
Gina, I'll get you connected with Jeff right afterwards.
Any other questions?
Okay, I think we're all set. We're right up to the hour. very lively conversation. Thank you for those who have posted your questions. I hope we answered everything. And if we have not, like I said, I will be connecting you with contact information, the presentation, and hopefully you can continue the conversation with Lydon Solutions.
Thanks, all.
All right,
Thank
everyone.
you, Michelle.
Thank you. Have a
Bye.
good rest of the day and be sure to join us for our next presentation. Just check our calendar. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.